Hello, I'm Stuart Samuels and I'm the owner of the Wellington Feltwell. The pub was bought by myself in 2013 with my son, his best friend and my wife, and it was previously called the Wine Lodge, and we changed the brand to be the Wellington in memory of Sergeant James Ward and the Wellington bombers that flew from Feltwell during the war. At the outbreak of war there were 3 squadrons based here, and we just thought it'd be a fitting tribute and one of the few things. So if I take you through and show you what we have, this is actually Sergeant James Ward and the tribute to him, and he won a Victoria Cross, often known as the Wing Walker. And basically on the 7th of July 1941 he wing walked over occupied Europe to put a starboard engine fire out and managed to get back in the plane. The plane then was able to make its way back to the UK. It crash landed at Rowley Mile Racecourse, which was home to a Wellington squadron at that point in time. Although the plane was repaired and flew again, it never flew on any missions that actually were involved bombing. It became a training aircraft. Here we demonstrate his medal entitlement, and we were given a piece of art that depicts Sergeant James Ward on the wing. Probably the most thing about the Wellington, it was known affectionately as the Wimpy, after the hamburger-eating king from Popeye, but the geodetic design of it was actually a Barnes-Wallis design, which sadly he didn't get enough accolade for, in my opinion. So yes, so we're there. So what I've done is just try to collect as much memorabilia in relation to the Wellington as I possibly can, and to people that flew in it and people that have had a part of my life. So we just basically have an incredible array. My wife thinks it's actually an obsession. Personally, I think it's just a healthy interest. But probably one of the oldest images I have in the pub of a Wellington for me is this one. And it's a watercolour. What's interesting about it is the fact not that it's such a great painting, but it was actually framed in London in September 1944. So it just became a must-have piece. And obviously the other things it actually shows is people that flew it. And here's my homage to Mr. Wimpy. And we try to leave one thing in the pub every year after a festive season. So we've left a little Christmas hat on Mr. Wimpy. Basically, I also look for other unique pieces or something that would have been to do with them. So it's a Wellington, and because the pub was dedicated to Sergeant James Ward's 75 Squadron, I managed to find a lighter with 75 Squadron's image on it. It's a Pacific lighter, so it dates probably from the mid-50s as opposed to the war, but it was dedicated to 75 Squadron, so it became an important collecting piece for myself. We believe this, probably with a scabbard, belonged to a tail end Charlie, and it's an escape axe. And obviously at some point in its life it was chromiumed, not quite sure when, but interestingly here is that this is actually out of a magazine from the wartime, and this is actually the same image made into a puzzle that would then have been sold for the war effort in order to try and raise funds. Just have other pieces of art, all originals, different people. We have a World War II kit bag. Now this is nothing to do. This gentleman, Sergeant Keane, was a very good friend of mine. What's interesting about his bag, although he joined in the late 50s, his kit bag was issued 1942. It's a 42 issued kit bag, so it's a World War II kit bag. We have, here are some bronzes, some other elements. We have poppies that were at the Tower of London, which we've managed to secure. We've also put a similar display to this in the village church for the whole village to see. sponsored by the Wellington. And probably one of the better pieces of these is this. And this piece of art depicts Wellingtons being built in, today it's called Broughton, but in World War II it was Hardin Aerodrome. And Hardin Aerodrome was a factory most famous for building a Wellington in less than 24 hours that went from start to finish to flight. On a Saturday, everyone came in for a propaganda called One a Day. But if you look in the photograph, it's actually women who are actually manufacturing the aircraft. And what's most interesting is my mother sat on a hillside in the Welsh mountains watching them fly out of there. She looked down on Hardin Aerodrome through the war as a child. So please follow me. Of a small array of bits and pieces. This lady is on here because she's nothing to do with a Wellington except her name is Chrissy Wellington, and she was the Iron Lady from the village. So the name that's symbolic to put her on our wall. Feltwell, after the war, became a training base for young officers. So it's here.
Honestly, have a look at
These are people. They're just friends. This is a real image. This is actually the photograph. As this image is from World War II, the original photograph. This is what's on the back of the photograph. It actually depicts the photograph was taken in February, but not released until May due to propaganda and being censored and released. This is just my father was a U.S. serviceman. And this, at his death, he had full military honours, and they dedicated to him. But please follow. This was when we started a pub. We were actually a gastro pub, and this was our restaurant area. However, since times have changed post-COVID, we now just use it as a function room. So we have music at least once a week. On a bank holiday, we have 3 nights of live music. So we open the doors behind you and we turn it into a music festival room. But the walls are adorned again with Wellingtons. Some of them are very good images and some are not quite as good, but they're all Wellingtons. This image here I actually got from the RAF regiment, and what's interesting about it is it's actually drawn in children's chalk. It's a chalk image on very thin, like wallpaper. But I thought, it seemed a good cause for their charity, and it got me another picture of a Wellington. So, and here's this is actually quite an interesting image because it shows them being bombed. This would have been an image you'd see on every single airfield. If we're further round, runs by it. This is actually by Chris Gold, and it depicts first response. So early days going out, Mark 1, and it's on its way, sadly. What's interesting about this is I actually have a couple of prints of this. However, I was fortunate enough in my endeavours searching the world regularly to try and find art, I found the original for sale at an auction. And I was lucky enough to secure it. So when I was actually had it, when I was unwrapping it at the bar, my wife said that this is, we've got that picture. I said, no, this is a painting, we have a print. And she then said, well, but we've already got it. So I said, yes, but this is a painting. Her next question was, is that the painting? And I explained to her, yes, it was the painting the prints were actually taken from. And then she didn't ever ask how much I paid for it. Her question was, could she have bought a car for the price I paid for my painting? I simply told her, not a Rolls Royce. So, and then we have some Colsons. We have several Colson's image, and we're fortunate enough that when we were a restaurant, Colson actually came to look at his images of Wellingtons on the Wellington, in the Wellington. And we were fortunate enough to have met the artist. Sadly, he's no longer with us, like many great men. So, please. Things like, this is an original proof. This is the original proof of the Airfix kit. And this is the kit that the image comes off of for the Wellington. So just pairing the bits and pieces together for the history. And some of my pieces were actually given to me. The one over here just below, this was actually given to me by Ron Brown. Ron Brown opened our pub for us when we dedicated it. He flew with 75 Squadron. So we're fortunate enough to have a 75 Squadron veteran dedicate the pub for us, which was phenomenal. And then through I just search regularly to see if I can find little pieces. While not all the actual instruments are all allegedly related to a Wellington, including the pump. But then this is just small knickknacks of World War II memorabilia and elements. And Roger Bear, two Roger Bear. One came in a box as Mark I, and one came in a duffel bag when they realised how popular Roger was. And all the models, with the exception of the Astral, are actually models of aircraft that would have flown out of Feltwell. So, including R for Robert, who's now in Brooklands, actually had a small stint of flying from Feltwell with 37 Squadron. So if I carry on, if we just turn to show you here, I actually have a lot to do with RAF Lakenheath and at the 48 Fighter Wing. I'm an honorary commander with 48 CMS, Component Maintenance Squadron. So they're called the Green Dragons. So we do a welcome to the pub for 48 CMS, so they know where to look for, and it gives them always a home, and we guarantee them a ride home if they make themselves known. But obviously the one above that's clearly visible is dedicated to Sergeant James Ward. And then we have other images that were done, and then we have adverts that were inside papers and magazines of the day, so that they make it together. Also, just tried to collect some aircraft memorabilia. If we just walk back this way, we actually have a propeller off of a Mark I. We have an aerial. And we have the radar dome. And then we have a small glass display case with the gloves, the headset, the actual oxygen mask and speaker, together with the goggles. And the newest little piece of that arrangement is from 1941. Everything else is prior to 41, but flew in the war. On the bottom shelf, the little pallet toys are children's toys that represent Wellingtons. Some of the pieces, just to have you. This is a lovely image, and it's a known image by many people. But I'm fortunate enough to have collected several of these. Of the 100 signed, I own 8. And what's interesting about this gentleman is the fact that he flew a Wellington, had to bail out, became a prisoner, and then was part of the Great Escape. So, try to collect him. Yeah. This is an image above, is the image of fellow Wellingtons flying over Feltwell, 75 Squadron over Wellington, over Feltwell. In their formation, you can just see the aerodrome just through here. And the road layout is around the village, is exactly as you see on there. And this is the piece that started my whole collection. The very first piece I bought is this photograph, and it's actually like of RAF Hickston. And I was fortunate enough to be able to locate Ron Brown, Warrant Officer Ron Brown, 68 mission survivor. Incredible man. Yeah, sadly no longer with us. But please, follow me and let's see if we can have a take a look outside. We've had the structures put up outside for people to enjoy the sun and extend our beer garden. And I was fortunate enough to be able to pick up a model that had been a rodeo controlled model but no longer airworthy. So we hung it in the ceiling just because we could. Nothing more than that. And the structures actually all depict a Wellington. They have all the webs around for the Wellington. And then our children's play area also shows it to be Wellingtons. My wife designed for small children. She designed what to go on the plane, and then we upscaled her drawing to actually draw and cut out a plywood Wellington for an activities board for children. We actually commissioned an aviation artist, retired wing commander, came and painted. Colin Mason came and actually painted my garden wall. Took 240 hours to paint our garden wall. And it depicts Feltwell and depicts the squadrons. K is in the air, very famous image of a wife, a Yankee with a soda, known as soda siphon. Interesting nose art. Americans painted girls and had things and cartoons, and we painted a soda siphon. Very interesting. But if you stand where this depicts the scene, in the distance, Ely Cathedral from what is now today Feltwell Golf Course, which was part of the aerodrome in World War II and the first British missile site, post-war, you can still see Ely Cathedral from that vantage point. Depicts 1154, 1155 radio. We'll actually try and show you when we actually have one inside the pub. So, and this is Sergeant James Ward VC. God rest his soul. And then we have, getting ready to be the evening, depicting a scene the evening before they're getting off, getting a briefing. And the artist's little small play on, it was painted in 2016, so small play is this. Depicting myself. Yeah, he thought it'd be funny. Not sure. But the school children, when they come once a year, they love it. And then we have 75 Squadron's emblem. And then we have it for Feltwell, which was post-war. They got their image. But it's a pheasant on it. So, as part of 100 years of the RAF, the Norfolk Air Cadets created 39, I think there were, of these, and they were depicted Spitfires, they depicted Victor tankers, they depicted F-35s, and they also depicted Tornadoes. And I was offered one to put on a wall, together with a plaque they put out for RAF Feltwell. And the reason I chose to have the Tornado is because in the war, the 9 Squadron flew out of RAF Honington and were first armed with Wellingtons. They became known as the Bats, and they held that symbol throughout the rest of it because they were renowned as being the most precision bombers at night. So because it was dedicated to 9 Squadron and carries a bat on its tail, it seemed the right aircraft to put here. I'll take you through to the next piece, which is part of the private area for the landlord and their families. But I use it as an art gallery. Not everything behind the doors is Wellington orientated, but the vast majority are. But before we go through the doors, I'll tell you these doors are from 1680, and they belong to a hall that was demolished. And when the hall was demolished, very few pieces are left in the village. Except these doors used to be the entrance to the pub. When I bought it, I found them inside. They had been, as I remember when it opened, the main doors into the pub. But they were no longer functional, so we had them repaired with oak out of the church. Victorian oak, when they removed some pews due to dry rot. So we had the doors repaired in order to put them back on here to hold them in perpetuity for the village. Please. You just flick on a little bit of light in here. I'll show you what we have here. This is an 1154 as depicted on the wall outside. This image on the wall above shows the conditions in which it would have been done in low levels of light. The light above your head is actually the light that he would have had to operate that with, and it dims as you turn it round. Piece above me are actually the lights distinguishing the aircraft when they came back over Allied lines, so that we tried not to shoot our own in friendly fire. And the control panel is actually the control panel that would have worked those lights down in Wellington. And just for it, I actually have a World War II sitting here, is a station flag. Doesn't everyone just have one? Yes. So through here, there's like a private collection, and it's different images of Wellingtons and some other aircraft, but mostly Wellingtons. And memorabilia would have been suitable. Being like, this is actually what would have been on the boxes for the incendiary devices that were dropped out of the aircraft. And very kindly it was donated to me by someone that found them when they were doing mine clearance on a site in London. In order to do some development, they found it buried in the ground and thought he'd bring it home for me. And shows a little bit of the history of Feltwell. This shows Feltwell. It's a standard image that you'd have got, but this is how Feltwell would have looked when it first was armed with Thor rockets. The warheads were American, but the propulsion system was owned by the RAF. So if we just follow up, it's just a lot more Wellington and some other bits and pieces. And then we have actual photographs of the Thor rocket at Feltwell. Please do follow me. I apologise for anything that comes on the camera that shows work in progress. We've been working all day installing electrics in some of the flats so that my son and his best friend, his business partner, can live a little more comfortably. RAF Burtonwood is an interesting thing because it was actually used in the war by the US military, and then post-war it was used by them till it was closed. But my father's first tour of this country, 1955, he was stationed at RAF Burtonwood. So I didn't want to give it up. And as I say, some Lancaster images, the one with all the signatures on, because there's some signatures of 75 Squadron, I bought the image. The picture before you, Jack Waterfall gave me for depicting the battle that he will talk about himself. And it just seemed a fitting home. It's the only big bit of wall I had, it could display it. But it's looked at. We probably get people to look around here at least once a week, if not more. Some weeks we might have tours of 20 people. And then we have a blood chitty, as I know it. I'm not sure what the RAF would have called it, but a blood chitty, so that you're able, if you're shot down and you're in a friendly area such as Russia was at the time, you depict this, say exactly what it says, in order to try and save your life. And it came with this gentleman, as this was actually, the two came as a single item, so whether it actually belonged to him or not, I have no idea, but I'm assuming it may have done for there to be a single lot. This depicts RAF Feltwell today. All the blue is still in existence. Feltwell is probably one of the best cocooned World War II air bases because it's used by the United States military as mainly housing and some warehousing, and they actually are known there for satellites. They actually have a deep space tracking station, and they do that there so that it remains fairly well cocooned. The camouflage is still on the buildings. It's just faded with time, like all things fade with memory. I have a chap in the RAF who was stationed at all these different stations, and his wife no longer wanted his memorabilia at home, so he offered it to myself, and I see him probably every 3 weeks, and he has a pint, and he comes and sits on our step and reminisces about where he was, and we're more than happy to do that for him, more than happy. We try and share it as much as we possibly can. It's no good having it and keeping it, looking after yourself, or hiding it in a vault, or having it stacked where no one can see it. I have too much of it already that I can't display. So what I try to do is rotate the images around in the pub. But my wife, we revamped our 10th anniversary, and that's where all the panelling's on the wall. But my wife likes it to be very regimented. She claimed that when I first did it, it looked like I bought a picture and put a nail on the wall. No sugar, exactly what I did. Some more images, and if you're astute in what you're filming, you'll see that I have more than one thing. This is over the fireplace in the main bar. However, it's signed by different people. Therefore, I think it's legitimate. I'm allowed more than one. But my wife is not always of the same opinion, sadly. But please, do come through. The kit bag that's on the wall, this aircraft was with the kit bag because it's the aircraft that Sergeant Keane, well, he was actually warrant officer, one of the youngest warrant officers in the RAF of his day. But what we have here is actually some bits and pieces. This is famously, many people will know this gentleman. His name's Ken Wallace. Ken Wallace is most famous not for the great aviator he was or his distinguished flying cross, but he's for Little Nellie. He actually designed and flew Little Nellie, and he was actually finished his life in a thing just outside docking on the Norfolk coast. Excuse me. So he's it. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get these pieces, and they depict him later in life. They depict him as Little Nellie. He depicts a Wellington crash of his, and loads of other bits and pieces. So it just seems a fitting place to put him in and to have him here. Picture at the top here is an image that's been painted from the film Target for Tonight. What's little known is people will say that no Wellington's flying and that it wasn't the rated aircraft for World War II. Sadly, that's very sadly mistaken. For a pre-war aircraft, continued to be manufactured until December 45, flew with the RAF until in the mid-50s almost, and it not only bombed early days, first 1,000 bomber raid on Europe, the vast majority, nearly 600 of the aircraft, were Wellingtons. So they did take the war to Europe, but it also took the war to the Atlantic, submarine hunting to try and help get our convoys in. It would also have a hoop underneath it to go mine sweeping. It was in all the theatres. It helped Malta survive. It was an incredible aircraft for its day, and it could take punishment that others couldn't, being fabric over an aluminum from where I'm from, and frame in a geodetic shape by Barnes Wallace. Incredible. So that's why we have our little homage to Little Nellie, our little corgi Little Nellie, and a few mugs and other bits and pieces that just depict. And here's our original Chris Goals. Much nicer as the original. But because we had taken the image off for our dart team to put dart boards where this goes, I don't want this where anyone can damage it or handle it too much. So I keep it here for private viewings. As I say, images of these just because they are and because they're signed prints and basically people have given to me. This was given to me by a gentleman who flew in the RAF. He flew C-130s Hercules, and his wife didn't want the images at his house any longer, so he'd said that he'd give them to me to put behind the scenes. We're also fortunate enough that this plate, B-17 over the cliffs of Dover, but an American couple went home, found that in the States, and sent it back to us to put in our wall just so that we could have it, just so that they had something for a B-17. The F-22 Raptors were here, and when they were here on exercise, they came and they did a talk to a men's group we have at the pub once a month. They did a talk and presented us with the image. In exchange, we presented them with a model of James Ward and the story of James Ward in a presentation case that I made for them. And we were fortunate enough to have their company. And then we have a Hawk as it was originally designed, and then we have the latest version before they were retired out of Valet. And we have the coins that go with the squadron for the fact that they were then challenge coins. The image of the 15s are because, fortunately, as an honour commander, my wife and myself got a date where we were able to go and be with the squadron for the Panthers, and then they presented us with the badges and all the things. We got to sit in the cockpit, etc., etc. So very privileged, very lucky. And that's what I have. Unless you want me I will very quickly, if you step this way, let me just show you. I have it boxed, cupboard, everywhere. This was given to me. This is from World War II and a very little known. This was a chap who lived in the came in the war and stayed in the village and never went home. Became a boyfriend and long-term partner of a woman in the village, and they didn't know what to do with his uniform after the partner died. Mr. Swan had gone long before that, so they gave it to me to frame and put into the pub. And this story tells you that the insignia here was post-war, and it's during the war, allegedly I've been told, that everyone for crew was given the rank of a sergeant. The reason for giving the rank of a sergeant is they would be treated better if taken prisoner than they might have been as an airman. But that caused trouble amongst other professions, such as mechanics, etc. So they invented an air crew thing, but it didn't last very long. I think it came in the late 50s and only lasted to about 1964, something like that. This does tell the whole story of how it occurred and what it's about. But probably one other image that nothing to do at all with a Wellington, but for an image of a Thor missile. This is a test fire on the Vandenberg Range out of California by a crew who manned the Thor rockets, and it's attributed to Feltwell. Feltwell fired it. So while my wife didn't think we collected this form of memorabilia, it belonged to Feltwell. And what's interesting about it, there's a spar on the back that I need to remove. But if you put light behind it, if I'm cheeky enough to get the light, see that the image is really crisp, very good. See what it is, but when you put light behind it, let me just balance it, it'll come to life very differently. How incredible is that for painting? So I need to find a way to backlight it, remove the spar, secure the frame and backlight it, just to be able to see that flame at the bottom through the steam. And this kite we bring out for the children. When the children come, we bring this kite out for them to see, and we assemble it. Normally hangs, but it is from the war, and I have flown it. I have flown it. Not really what you want to do with something from that era, but when the crews were down in the sea, and no one knew where they were, you'd fly a wire up that, you do that, you try and communicate to be able to find you. So it tells you where to put the strings at what wind speeds.
All right. And were they successful in any way? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know anyone that was rescued in one, sadly. I've never heard of a story of one.
Principle.
So, but the concept seemed right.
Yeah.
So I would have thought, in principle, it should work. He's flying the Wellington. This little boy is flying the Wellington that he's just made.
Yeah.
However, look what else is around him. A Vulcan, a Victor tanker. He's got HMS Victory in the background. It is just iconic British all over it. And a boy like every child that ever made an airfix would have done, pretend to fly it. And that's pretty much what I have here.